Let's pick things up there for tonight's Dateline Defense. Joining me, John Donnelly from Congressional Quarterly, editor of the CQ on Defense blog. John, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Today, President Obama warned Russia that if it continued to back Ukrainian separatists, it would face increasing isolation from the rest of the world. Does this mean more sanctions, or are there any other measures out there that the U.S. could take?
Well, there will definitely be a push for more sanctions, especially from conservatives such as John McCain and his allies on the Armed Services Committee and elsewhere in the Republican caucus. They will push for more sanctions in the defense, against Russia's defense sector, its energy sector, its banking sector. And I think the administration is inclined to do that anyway. So I think there's a safe bet that there will be a widening of sanctions. You may see, for example, a cutoff in the Pentagon's doing business with a Russian arms dealer to provide Russian-made helicopters for Afghan security forces. That's one of the things on the table. But I think when you step back, the effect of these U.S. sanctions is going to be limited to the degree that we do about 1/10 the business with Russia that Europe does. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, especially in Germany, is going to have a lot more of an effect on how much Vladimir Putin would feel from these sanctions.
Do you think this was a wake-up call for the Europeans, that they have to get tougher on Russia?
Well, I think in some parts of Europe that will happen. The question is, will it happen everywhere? Angela Merkel has said next to nothing about possible increased sanctions. The British have talked a lot tougher, but I think Germany is going to be the real test there. And I think ultimately it would take a heck of a lot for Vladimir Putin to alter his course in Ukraine. I think his fundamental calculus is that this is how Ukraine goes is central to the interests of Russia, and I think he's going to continue to wage this kind of surreptitious campaign through proxy forces.
Back here at home, Senator John McCain has been saying that this tragedy makes the case for the U.S. to provide arms to the Ukrainian government. Could we see a push to send weapons to the region? And if so, what kind of weaponry would most likely go there?
I think there will be a push by McCain and others. They've been a little vague about what in particular they would want to provide to the Ukrainians. I think realistically, unless they're talking about providing game-changing kind of weapons, which I don't see being advocated, that there won't be much of an effect of this, given the disparity between Russia's forces and Ukraine's. You already see provision of some non-lethal military gear by the Pentagon, things like radios and body armor, and you'll see more of that and more different types of non-lethal equipment. But I think the administration will resist. They have resisted providing weapons to Ukraine. I think that will continue. One thing the administration has advocated is something they call the European Reassurance Initiative, which is a $1 billion plan to basically increase U.S. military engagement in Eastern Europe, things like exercises and training. Some of our big warships and fighter jets have gone over in recent months to participate in exercises, and weapon sales. You'll see more of that too.
Big picture, stepping back and looking at this relationship between Russia and the U.S., it has long had problems. What do you think that this latest incident means for the two countries, and how these two leaders, Vladimir Putin and President Obama, have been responding to each other, responding to this crisis, this tragedy?
Well, as you point out correctly, there's always been difficulties. Russia has been helpful to the United States on a number of issues, however. Not as helpful as we would like, but, for example, in Syria, they have helped participate in the disarming of Assad's chemical weapons. They're helping on the logistical front, at least not hurting on the logistical front in terms of withdrawing U.S. troops from Afghanistan. They've supported our position with regard to Iran's potential nuclear weapons program. So not perfect, but they have helped a little bit, and that kind of cooperation is what could be in danger if the U.S. goes too far. So there will continue to be some testy, rocky relations ahead.
Let's switch our focus a little. Another headline that's come out of this tragedy, that the downed Malaysia Airlines jet was flying a route that it took it over a war zone. And do you think that this now makes a case for passenger planes to possibly be equipped with anti-missile systems?
There already has been that case made. This talk came up right after 9/11 because people started thinking about what are the ways terrorists could hit us, and shoulder-fired missiles was one of them. And there were a lot of people in Congress that were advocating this. A lot of defense contractors in particular were pushing members of Congress to advocate this. And I think it basically fell on the problem of cost. Even just to be able to outfit them to defend against shoulder-fired weapons would have costed somewhere on the order of $7 billion, supposedly. Who knows how many billions it would have actually cost. And so that will continue to be a sort of a marketing campaign by defense contractors. But I think given this is a pretty rare thing for a missile to shoot down an aircraft. So we have to ask the question, is the cost of this worth, how does that compare to the risk of this happening? There's also a lot of false positives from these systems. You'd see a lot of airlines taking evasive maneuvers to avoid missiles that weren't really coming at them. I was on a C-17 in the Middle East with the Secretary of Defense at the time, William Cohen, and the plane thought it was under missile attack because of the glint of the sun off a windshield below in Saudi Arabia. We had to take some pretty violent evasive maneuvers. I don't think U.S. passengers on jets will want to do the same.
Good point. It's also important to note this was a Malaysian airplane, so not every nation, not every organization has the capabilities, the financing to create such a system. John Donnelly from Congressional Quarterly, editor of the CQ on Defense blog. Thank you, John.
Thanks.